All right, we are live. And hey, everyone, I'm glad to be back to have the opportunity to have a really good conversation today with a soror of mine. Her name is Nakki Price, and we're going to have a good conversation today based on domestic violence and removing yourself from a domestic violence situation. So, uh, I think today's conversation is going to be a good one for education and awareness. So I hope you all enjoy it. Here we go. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my soror, Nakki Price. And here we go. Hey, how you doing, soror? Hold on. I got you on mute. Let me unmute you. My bad. So I was saying, how you doing? How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I want to say thank you for reaching out to me and allowing me the opportunity to talk to you today about a pretty serious topic that a lot of families, a lot of people, a lot of adults and children need to be aware of, and
Hmm.
something that we should bring an end to, um, and that is domestic violence. And I gotta say, this is absolutely one of the more sensitive topics that I've had the pleasure to talk about. So, help me and I'll help you through this entire discussion that we're going to have today.
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So, talk to me about who are you? Talk to me. What's your background? Where you're from, and all those different things.
Well, I was born in Delaware and I lived there the majority of my life.
Hmm.
I eventually graduated high school, college, went to University of South Florida for grad school, and then I moved to Georgia in 2003 where I started working for the federal government at CDC.
Hmm.
And then I took some time off of CDC and moved to Maryland at the end of 2010.
Hmm.
And I worked for FDA for about 6 years.
Okay,
And that is where I met my husband, my ex husband now.
got you. I got you.
During that time, I was open to dating, and we actually met through a mutual friend.
Hmm.
And he did not live in Maryland at the time. He lived in another state. And he moved to Maryland after we decided to get serious.
Hmm.
Now, let me say that I did know him for some time before we got into a relationship and eventually got married. I knew him maybe 6 or 7 years
Yeah.
before we started being serious about one another.
Hmm.
And then in a year, we decided to get married when he moved.
Got you.
Early in the relationship, there was, I felt like I was in love and all of that.
Hmm.
Growing up, I saw a lot of crazy things. I did see some violence in our household due to alcoholism. I grew up with
Yeah.
my grandparents. And for us, it was normal. But what I did know is that it wasn't something I wanted for my adult life.
Yeah.
And I had these discussions with my ex-husband, especially about drinking, about physical violence. He
Hmm.
knew that I was firmly against that. My mother even told him before we got married, she's very serious about these things. And if you're going to marry my daughter, you have to be committed to these things. And of course, at that time, and he said, no problems, it's nothing you have to worry about. I, by any means, never would expect a marriage to be perfect. However, I think when you get to the point of physical violence, it's that point. And for me, that was the only thing I felt that I would walk away from with no questions asked.
Yeah.
And that's just exactly what I did. I did not expect it to happen, but when it did, I walked away. Let me say that walking away for me is not the same experience that a lot of people have.
Correct.
Walking away could be very difficult because when you're in an abusive relationship, it doesn't start being physical. It starts with the small things like isolating you from your friends,
Mm-hmm.
like keeping track of your money,
Mm-hmm.
like even isolating you from your family, listening to your phone conversations. I thought he was caring for me. I thought that he was concerned. I thought that was his way of showing love and protection.
Yeah. So.
And so I did not immediately see that as a red flag to say, I think you need to be careful here. After we got married, literally a month after we got married, he turned into someone I did not recognize.
Mm.
Now, granted, when you start living with someone, you really know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And he had begun drinking and smoking, my two big deal breakers that he said he wouldn't do. And one night he just laid me out. He called me names that I dare not ever repeat.
Yeah.
It was actually Mother's Day. We hosted my mom, my aunt, and some cousins over. He cooked. But in the meantime, he was drinking back in our bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
After they left, I had forgotten to give my mom her Mother's Day gift, and she was staying 2 hours away in Delaware with my aunt. He literally made me drive in the middle of the night to Delaware from Maryland to give my mom her gift while he slept in the passenger seat.
Wow.
And I had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to think. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, who did I marry?
Yeah.
The next day, I told him about it when he was sober, and he apologized profusely, of course, promised I'd never have to worry about it again. And a couple months later, I was pregnant with our daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that during the time that I was carrying my daughter, he actually was who I thought I had married for the most part.
Mm.
He took really good care of me. He wouldn't let me lift a finger. It was surreal. But after my daughter was born, within a couple months, his behaviors changed again. So
Yeah.
I thought the initial thing was once, and he apologized, and that was it. After my daughter was born, he had begun those same behaviors again. Mainly, he would go to work, he would get off work, he would stay out 3 or 4 hours after work, drinking, going to bars. He would come home, it'd be very late. I would be asleep. And of course, he was not happy about that. He smelled like a bar coming home, and he felt like I should wake up and you know, do by that point I made sure his dinner was on the stove and that was it. There was a time where he gave me some really serious threats and got in my face, and I was very afraid. When I went to work the next day, I talked to a colleague who is a lawyer. My job afforded me the opportunity to work with a lot of attorneys in various fields. My office mate was a lawyer. I told her, hey, if I don't tell you that I have an appointment and I'm not at work by 10, I need you to call my mom because something has happened. I told her what happened. My ex-husband just kept calling a job, apologizing and all that. He realized I left my wedding ring at home. He was, of course, very apologetic, but it was something that I just filed. I did start seeing a therapist and made a plan to leave. By the end of that year, my plan was to leave. And this was before he even got physical, because that one time he got in my face was scary enough that I knew his next step would be putting his hands on me. And so fast forward, the night of the first Republican debate, I'll never forget it. I'm watching television. This is in 2015. He comes in. It's the night before our chapter retreat. My mom is flying in for the weekend to watch my daughter and my stepson, who had stayed with us at the time, because he had to work. I was retreating with the sorors. She was coming in to help with the kids. And that Thursday night he came in, he was very drunk, and he started going off about why my mom was coming. And I said, hey, this isn't new. This arrangement was made so that you can work. I can do my thing with the sorors, and the kids are taken care of. And the next thing I knew, his hand made contact with my face. And so we literally fought while my 17-month-old baby was in the bed. And I was choked, drug across the floor. It was something I never thought would happen to me. Yeah. Somebody knocked on my door. We lived in an apartment. I'm running toward the door. Tackles me in the hallway. But the person, they never called the police, never came back. They just knocked. And he put his hand over my mouth so I couldn't scream. My stepson, he was paralyzed with fear. I was hoping he would come, but he didn't. He was very afraid of his father. He was 14 at the time. Yeah. And there was a point I thought I would die, because he had his arm around my neck so tightly that I was beginning to lose some consciousness. And all I could think of is, God does not want me to die on this apartment floor.
Yes.
And I worked up enough strength to roll him off of me. And I, crawled away. I'm not a violent person, so I didn't think about picking up lamps and all that stuff. Your brain does not go there. And by the time I drug myself up to the bed, my daughter, she literally just sat up in the bed and started screaming. And he stopped. Like right in his tracks. And a lot happened during that time. Like, I had a cool new iPhone. He broke it in half, so I couldn't call the police. He blocked me in our bedroom so I couldn't leave. I was afraid. He was so drunk that he slept in front of the door the entire night. I was up. I was thinking a lot. I actually hid cash under my sink in the bathroom in case he tried to shake me down.
Mm-hmm.
And in the morning, my mom was arriving at Dulles on a 7 o'clock flight. I told him he had to let me go get her, or
Mm-hmm.
she would know there was a problem. I'm
Yeah.
gonna say my mom is gangster, and she if knows I'm on time, if something's off kilter, she'll know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have my phone, but I had my work telephone, and I was able to, even though he shook, my purse down, that was one thing that didn't fall out. So I got my daughter together. I took a shower. And I was horrified because I was black, my lip was dead, face bruised,
Mm-hmm.
my knees and legs were all hurting. And he said, "Well, don't tell your mom what happened." And I said, "Well, do you think she is going to think I did all this to myself? I like, look at my face. What do you think she's going to think?"
Yeah.
So he made me take him to the ATM and withdraw money
Wow.
to give to him. And because I had a plan to get away, I had several bank accounts. So I took him to the one that had the least money. I was like, all I have is $60. Here's the receipt. So you just took whatever was left. He didn't know what I had. And I gave him the $60 and dropped him off back at the house. I went and picked up my mom. When she landed, I called her. I texted her actually from my work phone. And I said, "Mom, I don't have my regular phone. Just come on out." And she didn't ask any questions about the phone. She came out. And the first thing she says, "What happened to you?" And I drove and talked, and we went straight to the police station. And that is when I realized the legal system, at least at that time in the state of Maryland, was not set up to protect people from things like this.
Yeah.
Now, before I go on, did you have any questions or thoughts about what led up?
I've got a lot, but
Hmm.
I prefer to give you the platform to just talk and share your story, and then I could always come and follow up with questions afterwards.
Okay. Okay.
So, uh, if you're now checking
So
in, hold on,
we
Soror.
spent.
Soror, let me just do a quick thing. If you're now checking out the discussion, you're checking out the discussion with Soror and Nakki Price, telling of the personal story, very personal story regarding domestic violence. And I hope you have your questions, have your comments, send them on. You can write them down on the discussion, and we will gladly ask them during the time, and I'm sure she'd gladly be willing to answer them appropriately. So go on, Sarah. Appreciate you, by the way.
Okay. So we spent the day basically, and we were in Prince George's, the commissioners to file a police report, order of protection,
Mm-hmm.
and that process is fairly easy. You fill out the paperwork. If you're all beat up, the judge is not going to say no.
Yeah.
However, the order of protection was only for 2 weeks. By the time I got home, it was the evening. My stepson was at home alone. My ex-husband was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I did talk to my stepson, which was very difficult to do because he witnessed all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't know really what to say to him, and I don't think he knew what to say to me, but I told him that I was going to do my best to make sure that he made it back to California to his mother very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the next couple of months, I spent a lot of time working with the sheriff's department in Prince George's County. They were excellent, by the way. They were excellent. They had a corporal that was assigned to my case. He called me on a weekly basis. They were actually tracking my ex-husband through his cell phone because he had begun to harass me on Facebook.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was saying, he's not going to harass me. I'm going to cut off his cell phone. And the corporal was like, please don't, because that's one way that we can track him.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up tracking him all the way back to California. They were able to get the assistance of the United States Marshals,
Mm-hmm.
who picked him up at his parents' house and arrested him.
Mm-hmm.
So that went on for 2 months, and then within 30 days, they extradited him back to Maryland, literally on his birthday. And the next time I saw him, we were in court.
Yeah.
The process of getting to court is very scary.
Why is it scary?
It's scary because if you've never had any interaction with the legal system, I've never been in trouble. I've never needed a lawyer for anything. Yes, I have a lot of friends that are lawyers, but I've never needed them for anything. And so I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
In the state of Maryland, at least in Prince George's County, the state's attorney, that office works on behalf of the plaintiff or the victim. And then they have public defenders or private attorneys who work on behalf of the defendant. One of my good friends, Renee Boston, she's an attorney. Her and her husband are attorneys in Maryland, and she does criminal law, whereas she would normally work on behalf of someone like my ex-husband. But she went to court with me. She helped me understand what the process was. Of course, she knew the state's attorneys, and so she was able to find out information. And we went to court maybe 4 or 5 times before they even got to our case, because as you can imagine, you're on a docket.
Yeah.
And they go through just like yours, and you hear the arteries, things happen to judges, a variety of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we got to our case, the judge that we had at the time, I heard he was very strict on domestic violence cases. I told my story. I did not make a victim impact statement. I felt that everything spoke for itself.
Yeah.
And this particular judge basically said, well, before we get to that point, the state's attorney was actually going to plea out my ex-husband on probation. I told them absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Everyone else who have similar cases, they're getting 18 to 24 months, which I didn't think was enough. But you're going to offer him 18 to 24 months, and he's going to take it because I know my ex-husband. He doesn't want me to tell the story in court. And he actually accepted the plea. I mean, he accepted the bargain. You know, he would take the 24 months. And the judge decided that he would suspend the 24 months and let him go home.
What?
And this was a few days before Christmas. And as you can imagine, I was shocked. My friend was shocked. She was like, he's normally not like that. And my ex-husband took the plea because he did not want to have me tell the story of what happened.
Yeah.
And that evening, he was let out of prison. I had not talked to him again until later on. He had ended up getting a bus ticket back to California where he's from. There was a no contact order, and I did hear from him later. We just talked through email just to catch him up on things going on in my daughter's life, really. There was no discussion about anything else. I had filed for divorce during our court proceedings, and within final. And there was a time where I hear from, because I had told him some good news about our daughter. She was a toddler. Hey, this happened in school, and I thought he would be happy to hear it, but he didn't respond. And so after maybe 3 weeks, I just Googled his name, and I realized he was in prison in California. And the reason was because he assaulted another woman. The laws, yeah, go ahead.
Can I point something out that I noticed?
Mm-hmm.
Even as a victim of violence of your soon-to-be ex-husband, you still found the motherly strength to let him know little things that's going on in your daughter's life. How are you so sweet even in a sour time like that? How are you able to do that?
Because I grew up with my grandparents, because my mother, she had me young.
Yeah.
My father, he went his separate, they went their separate ways and lived their separate lives.
Yeah.
And I was determined that for me, I was going to do the right thing. I was going to have my career, get married, then have kids.
Yeah.
And yes, that happened, right? I said I was starting the right way, but as you can see, it doesn't mean that it's going to last or end up in the fairy tale that you want.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted, regardless of what happened between he and I, is that my daughter not grow up without her father, or that he's a stranger to her. Mm-hmm. The relationship that I have with my father as an adult, he is still a stranger, because I've chosen that for my life because of all of the things that happened over the years. Mm-hmm. And I would never want that for her. And the irony is that when I met my ex-husband and we got serious and we first got married, I wasn't really connected to my parents. And because of him, I reconnected.
Wow.
He was like, we're having a baby. They're going to be, this may be another chance for them to get it right. And I was like, okay, as you can tell, my ex-husband, I don't think he's a bad person, even still.
Wow.
But he has some serious problems that require professional help that he needed to get together.
Let's talk about that, Soror.
Yeah.
What's your current line of work?
I am a public health advisor at CDC, and I work in the area of tobacco control.
For the FDA. So,
well, for CDC now.
For the CDC,
I
CDC
came back.
now.
Yeah, I came back to CDC after I got divorced. I came back to Georgia because I wanted to be back here.
Gotcha. So I would say, maybe it's a stretch for me to say this, but you're in a line of work where you see someone having issues, you know of the guidance and the things that should be reached out and given to that person to support and improve their health, whether mental or physical, correct?
Correct.
Do you see where I'm going with this?
I see exactly where you're going with this.
So talk to me.
And I'm going to tell you, I never thought something like this would happen to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm educated, I'm smart. I make good money. I made 3 times the amount my ex-husband made, and it wasn't
Hmm.
a big deal for me. But there are people with the mindset that things like this cannot happen to them because they are so and so and have done all of these things in their
Hmm.
lives.
Yes.
No one is exempt
Hmm.
from these types of situations because they're so complex. Like I told you, the things that I saw, I didn't catch right away because I was in love, you
Talk
know?
talk to me about that then. This is the discussion
Yeah.
part of.
Yeah.
First of all, you had me almost in freaking tears here. I'm trying to hold it together myself because knowing that you still had the strength to persevere through that, and you still had the maternal sweetness to want to have your child to have that relationship with her father. That's something that not a lot of folks could honestly deal with, you know. So just a quick just a quick shout out to you, all right, on that. First and foremost, I want to say I'm thankful to see that you're still here with us, even even through that crazy time that you've been through. I want to say I'm thankful to see that. um, let's talk about, and you said it a little bit ago, um, some of us think that we can't and we won't be a victim of domestic violence because we think we're so high up that we don't see that ever happening to us. What were those signs? I know you spoke about it earlier during your discussion, but
Yeah.
what were those signs that people should start tapping into and be like, okay, this is not right? What are those signs?
The first thing was the isolation and the way that he called himself protecting me.
Hmm.
Both of us have very strong personalities,
Yeah.
but I feel that he took my strong personality as a challenge for him,
Yeah.
and that he used tactics to literally try to break me down to the lowest common denominator.
Hmm.
You're married to a woman that makes 3 times the amount of money that you do. She's used to coming and going, doing what she pleases. I was active in my chapter. I went to chapter
Hmm.
meetings. I did community service, all these things. I have a social life. Yes, he was new to where we lived. He went to work, came home.
Hmm.
He didn't know many people. He wasn't the type of guy that would go to a bar and watch sports and just meet the guys around him. I would encourage him, hey, go watch football at the bar
Hmm.
down the street. You might meet some people from the neighborhood.
Hmm.
But he was not that type that would do that.
I got you.
For
I
him,
got you.
he watched Facebook. Whatever I posted, I used to blog and talk about all kind of things in my life that were going on.
Hmm.
And he would say, why are you making these disparaging remarks about yourself? And well, it's the truth. It's a personal experience. And every time I talk about something, it helps someone else.
Hmm.
And he's like, I don't want you to do that anymore. And I thought, okay, he's being protective, okay. And then when I went to work, I found out he was on my Facebook profile and he'll start asking me, who's this person? Who's
Yeah.
that person? And I'm like, this person has been my friend for 15 years. Yeah, it's a guy, but we're friends. He's like family. So
Hmm.
he made me get rid of pictures of exes. I mean, stuff that, how you just have stuff in boxes or on a
Yeah.
bookshelf and you never really revisit it.
Hmm.
When he was looking for work, he had a lot of time to go through my stuff. So
Yeah.
every day I will come home to questions about what is this and who is that. And it was very uncomfortable.
Let me
And
ask.
like I said, go ahead.
Let me ask. He said it was very uncomfortable. He was doing the things that I guess some could take as, oh, I got a protective significant other, but it was really an intrusive significant other. At what point did it change from, I don't think this is protection and this is more so an obstructionist?
After that first time he got in my face, when he was intoxicated and all of the things he was saying, I mean, he said a lot. He brought up stuff like from my Facebook page. He brought up any and everything. I realized, okay, this guy really has something going on. And I'm just going to keep that in my mind and watch what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, when I got pregnant with our daughter, which was almost immediately after we got married. So I will tell you, the first thing I thought was, daggone it, he trapped me. And
does happen.
During that year that I was pregnant, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
A different person. And then after our daughter was born, all hell broke loose again. And as I mentioned, working with my therapist, I created an exit plan. By the end of 2015, I was going to be gone, but he accelerated it by putting his hands on me.
Can I add something on our discussion?
Sure.
And it's a little thing that I'm going to have scrolling on the bottom of the page, but let me talk to the viewers. If you are a victim of domestic violence, if you know someone who may be going through cases of domestic violence, use this website, thehotline.org/help, and use it. Use the resources.
Yeah.
Especially during this time of COVID-19. And this is something that I want to add to our discussion. And maybe you can help me out with it as well. I was listening to NPR a couple days ago, and they were talking about how there has been an uptick in domestic violence situations going on at home because, there's cases where a domestic violence victim may not be able to leave their home. Shelters aren't able to house them simply because of social distancing and spacing and funding. So, I guess that's one of the side effects of this pandemic that we're going through, and those services that are meant to help out those who are in desperate need. So let's talk a little bit more. I know that this discussion started off where you spoke on your personal story about how you dealt with it, how you persevered, how now you are doing your thing as a worker back home in Georgia. And I'm sure you're very happy to be back home in Georgia. How exactly does one leave a situation where love is clouding their judgment? Because you spoke about it also. You said love may have clouded your judgment in a lot of things. How does one muster the strength to uncloud their judgment, especially when love is involved?
For me, when a person threatens to take my life, mm-hmm. and they are 2 centimeters from your face while doing it, that's all I needed. There was nothing else to convince me that no one wants to think about something so horrible for someone they care about.
Yeah.
But for me, I felt like I saw the devil himself.
Yeah.
It was somebody I didn't recognize. And that's when I knew I had to do something. Now, let me back up some, because remember I said, like, things like this doesn't happen to people like me, right?
Yeah.
Well, when it was time to go through the legal process, I couldn't navigate it. Having a master's degree and some common sense, you would think you could navigate the legal process, but I couldn't. And having my friends who are lawyers helped. In Maryland, there's an organization called House of Ruth that helped. They represented me in court when I had to hide from my ex-husband because I didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
My job was very supportive when I had to come to work limping, and somebody like, what the hell happened to you? And I told them, look, this is what happened, and I'm gonna need your help. And at work, because I work on a federal property there, they told me, send us his picture, a description of his car. Every car that looked like his, they inspected. And my office mate had a similar car. She was like, girl, they out there inspecting the cars. What's going on? And so I had to tell her. So when she came in and saw me, she was like, oh my gosh. And so I'm grateful that I was in a workplace where I felt safe. I knew he couldn't come up in there and act a fool. He couldn't call there and act a fool because there's a federal offense if he did. I'm fortunate that I had friends that were attorneys to help me navigate the process. But organizations like House of Ruth are built to help women through the process. They represent you in court. They tell you what's going to happen in the process. I was not able to find a place to go. I will say that I did not have emergency shelter, none of that. So I had to move in such a way that was normal but abnormal so that I could feel safe until I was about to go, you know.
How about this? Let me share the tab that has information on the House of Ruth on our screen. Y'all check it out.
Check it out. And if you have any services with them, I highly recommend it. They are fantastic, and they demonstrated so much empathy and care. And when I had to go into hiding, they went to court on my behalf to make sure that my order of protection stood. They answered questions. Even during holiday time, they apparently, their clients, they have other attorneys, adopt families.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't need anything. I make pretty good money. I'm all right. They said, no, we do this for everyone, regardless of your social economic status. And they took care of my daughter and I for the holidays. So if you ever have the opportunity to volunteer, donate anything, please consider them, because they help women of all walks of life through the process and to get where they need to go.
Excellent reference.
If it weren't for them, my order of protection could have been dropped because I couldn't make it to court.
Yeah. Got you. I got you.
And you're absolutely right. During this time of COVID, we're all stuck in the house. Yes, people are more vulnerable. All kinds of abuse.
So what I'm doing right now, I am I'm doing a quick search on, let's go on the news, right? And just so that y'all know that I'm not blowing smoke up your butts or anything like that out there, I want to show y'all the real deal regarding COVID-19 and domestic violence. And these are just news articles that you can go right now and Google COVID-19 domestic violence. Let me do a stop there, and then let me share that tab real fast. And here we go. So these are news articles, and I think these may actually connect with the article that I just heard on the radio from what you call it from uh, NPR, where they said COVID-19 and coronavirus, as far as domestic violence, shows that there's an uptick that's going on. So let's read this quick. Let me read this title here real fast. It says, "Is domestic violence rising during the coronavirus shutdown?" Here's what the data shows. It said reports of some domestic in three cities that they have dropped, but police and experts said that may be a problem. If you dig a little deeper into the article itself, it gives really detailed statistics as far as showing the uptick in domestic violence situation going on, um, especially during this pandemic. And this is something that we need to be aware of. We need to really be aware of it because oftentimes, as Soror Price said, you know, the abusers attempt to isolate you. The abusers attempt to place some sort of control, and especially if they're the physically stronger or the financial backer of the house, they will try their darnest to hold and control you. And now with social distancing forcing many of us to stay at home, and they know that you as the victim have to stay at home, they're going to use that against your will. They're going to use that for their advantage. They're going to use that to place the violent tendencies and the violent nature that they've got. So just be aware of that. If you're in a situation that you think that this doesn't feel right, first of all, love doesn't hurt. Love does not hurt. No, love is not meant to hurt and destroy you. Love may sting sometimes. Oh, I love this person. I can't. Why does my heart feel this way? But love is not supposed to physically hurt you at all. But if you find yourself in a situation like that, I would say, and I will implore onto you, reach out to the different organizations that Soror Price talked on, the Ruth, the Hotline organization. Check it out and get those options there for you. But let me pull away from my, diatribe, my talk, my blah, blah, blahing, and let me just hear back from you, Soror. So
there's a couple things that I definitely want to put out there.
Yeah.
And it's easy for someone to say, call this number, go to this website. They may not have a moment to even use the restroom in peace.
Yeah.
Getting away for a lot of people who are in the situation. Don't get it twisted, because there are some men in these situations. Yes. And there are people of same-sex relationships who are also being abused. So we don't want to overlook that. But leaving is the most dangerous time for a person who is going through a situation like this. So being on the outside, is easy for us to say, just leave, There were many times I was scared. That's why I had to leave and hide, because for 3 months I didn't know where my ex-husband was. And everybody doesn't have the capacity to do that. They don't have the capacity to go somewhere else and be with someone else, like family, friends. I had friends that say, come to my house. And I said, no, I can't put you and your family in danger. That's how I felt. I don't want to put y'all in danger. So I went to a family member's house that I knew could handle the situation if need be. And that's where I stayed. And so everybody doesn't have resources like that. And so as people on the outside, before you go, let me say this. As people on the outside, we have to be very mindful of that. And we may want to be observant. And if we see something that's not right, don't be afraid to report it. Okay? But you have to be careful about that. We don't want the person to get hurt or having to get killed. And so approaching these situations, even as we try to help others, we have to be very careful, reaching out to the person hey, you want to go to lunch sometime? Are you
Hmm.
able to just have a
Hmm.
quick chat? Just something that could be totally taken as innocent from anyone could open a door for someone. But you just don't want to be busting in somebody's house. And
Hmm.
unless you got a, a battalion behind you, you don't want to be going and thinking that you're some kind of superhero. It has to be done in a way that keeps the person affected safe.
I would say in the military, what I do remember is that we have like little signs that talks about if you are a victim of domestic violence, and people have them stuck in bathrooms with little strips for points of contacts. That if a person feels like they're in the need
Mm-hmm.
of reaching out for care, they could take one of those little strips and call that number. And I think that's been something that's super effective for a lot of folks. So I just want to put that idea out there. If you want to bring awareness, if you want to allow a victim or an eventual victor, because I don't want to see person as a victim always. I want to see them as an eventual victor. If you want to have that option to allow them to reach out, use that option. But I want to say something. How important is transparency in a time of domestic violence awareness? How important is transparency? And how did you display your transparency?
For me, transparency was so important because I needed help. Like I told you, I couldn't navigate the legal system. I
Yes.
worked with lawyers who were my friends and colleagues. I worked with somebody who worked in family law,
Mm-hmm.
someone who worked in criminal law, someone worked in patents, but they even had legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, thanks to one of my friends who clerked at the Prince George's County Courthouse in the family division, she was like, "You don't need to hire anybody to do your divorce. Go down. This is what you do. And if you need help, I'll call in a favor."
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was everything. And the other piece I want to mention is I'm transparent because I want people to know that things like this does happen
Yes.
to those of us who think we're untouchable.
Yes.
Because I was on a real high horse until this happened. I was judgy and on a high horse before I became a parent. Now that I'm a parent, I have a lot more empathy and patience. And two, now that this situation has happened, I'm not exempt. Hey, I don't care how educated I am, how many figures I make, I was not exempt
Mm-hmm.
from that horrible situation. I
Yeah.
could have died, and my education and salary wouldn't mean anything.
Hmm.
My child would have not have parents.
Yeah.
And there's three things that I thought about. Like after I went through this whole process, what is, and this is important for us as members of organizations, right? Where most of us, have college degrees, are professionals. We serve the communities in
Mm-hmm.
our respective organizations. We educate the public on a variety of things. But this is one effort that we have not taken a stance on as Greek letter organizations. Why? Yes, it's very sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something in it for the men and it's something in it for the women.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned, anybody can be affected by this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter your age. We have our college youth members
Mm-hmm.
who experience
Yeah.
dating violence. That's why it's called intimate partner violence
I'll tell you
because,
this. Something just in the news recently. We had a soror
mhm.
who was two sorors actually, who were killed by
I want to
their
say it was three.
yeah. So the news is out there.
And recently, yeah.
And I'll tell you this. If we, and I'm not one to talk down on Greek letter organizations. What I see as something potentially we can do nationally is something that you can then package the exact issue and address it through the chain of command, who eventually could put it on a national platform. And so the potential is there. It's just now a matter of us taking it and running with it. I'm sure if I packaged a situation based on domestic violence as a health issue and addressed it up my chain of command all the way up to International President Brother Crystal, who was on this discussion show, by the way, at one time, I am sure that's something that we could bring nationally and run with it. But we need a champion behind it. And it all depends now.
Right.
Who wants to be that champion? Who wants to run with it?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at her. I'm looking at her.
Mm-hmm. Look, that's for another episode.
I'm looking at her.
here we are. This is my. I really want to stay on the show, and I appreciate you having me on here talking about this, because, as you said, it has been in the news. And yes, the sorors, we have been talking about this, right? And our brothers, you guys have been talking about this. Mm-hmm. And there's a piece for men and women to be. If you see your brother acting in a way that's the way it needs to act towards his woman, pull him to the side. Brother, what's going on? How can I help you? Mm-hmm. Because what I see here is not appropriate. Because sometimes we just overlook things just because it may seem small, but when they go home, it's not small, right? Yeah. At the same time, as sisters, we can pull each other closer. Sis, do you need a hand? Because let me tell you, after that night, I did go to the retreat all busted up, and some of my sorors was like, hey, what time let's go pack your stuff up now. I was like, my mom's at the house. He ain't nowhere around. It's nothing for y'all to do right now. You know, no, I couldn't call him in the middle of the night to come rescue me because my phone was broken. Yeah. You know, but here's the thing. We need to talk about this issue and not make it taboo in our organizations.
Absolutely.
We need to talk about it as it relates through the spectrum of our memberships. As I mentioned, we have our college and young adults. We have those of us that are in the middle who deal with it differently. And then we have our more seasoned sorors and brothers who deal with elder abuse. Yeah. By their families, by their partners, by anyone. It's a whole spectrum that we need to be aware of, and we need to equip our members to be able to recognize signs, to be able to find resources, because all resources are not created equal and they're not the same in each state.
Right.
The laws aren't even the same in each state. And
I'll tell you this, Soror. I think, holding oneself accountable and holding oneself to be a champion for domestic violence awareness is something that you've done excellently. And I hope, based on our discussion that we had today, that this energy keeps going, and whoever, soror or non-soror, frat or non-frat, young, old, is checking out our discussion, takes what we're talking about and has that discussion with someone. I think, unfortunately, domestic violence awareness and bringing up abusers and holding abusers accountable is still so taboo that this is something that we, as people, not just people of color or people in organizations, but people, need to divide and conquer. But, Soror,
you're absolutely right.
In closing, because we come close to our time in discussion, and I think I want to have you come back again and talk, because this has been eye opening. It's been you almost caught me slipping with the tears a little bit, but I held back. I held back. I held it back. But
Look, I've cried so many, I don't have any more left.
you know
And
what?
like, and look, my commitment to myself is to save tears for happy things.
Wonderful.
And so I'm done crying
That's what you almost had
for
me do.
that.
You almost had me crying tears of joy just seeing and knowing that someone who has been through the storm, such as yourself, can still find that ray of sunshine to want her daughter to have a relationship with her dad. And that is something beautiful. Not a lot of folks are able to do. But Sora Price, I want to say to you, thank you for coming and talking. I love you. We love you. We all love you for being an advocate for victims' violence, domestic violence. And I want you to come back and talk with us again.
Thank you so much again for having me on your show.
Hmm.
Anybody, you guys can find me on Facebook and you can reach out to me for conversation. If you feel like I need help, just need to reach to someone. My fingers are fantastic on the computer. I'll do what I can. I'm not a magician,
Yeah.
but I'll do what I can to assist you with connecting with resources. And we have many
Hmm.
sorors and frat brothers who are in social services, who are in legal services. It's my hope that they'll make themselves visible and available to help. And, I look forward to coming back
Hmm.
because there's so much more, because now I have a daughter to raise, and to tell her love doesn't hurt when she asks, where's my dad? She's 6 now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she talks to her father, and he has been very good with maintaining boundaries because he knows and it's my hope that when she grows up, she'll also understand that love does not hurt.
Love
It's
does not
always meant
hurt.
to feel good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Soror, we will talk again, okay? Wait for me in the broadcast room.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit more, all right?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. No problem.
Sure, thank you.
So we had a great discussion with Sora Price. I implore to you, if you are a victim of domestic violence, or if you know someone that is a victim of domestic violence, don't ignore the signs. Check out the website that we have going in the bottom of this page, and I'm looking forward to our future discussions with Sora Price. And as I always say, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and take care of others. Peace.